I caught my stepsister in bed with my boyfriend. What happened next? Completely shattered my world and changed my life forever. Hey everyone. I never thought I'd be telling this story. It's the kind of thing you'd only expect to see in some over-the-top Netflix drama, but nope, it's my life. Imagine walking into your own room and finding your boyfriend, your supposedly loyal boyfriend, in bed with someone else. And not just anyone, it was my stepsister. Yeah, let that sink in for a second. If you think that's where the chaos ends, buckle up. This story's got betrayal, revenge, and a twist I still can't believe actually happened. Let's dive in. Part 1. Meet the cast of chaos. Alright, so let me give you a little background before the drama kicks off. My name's Mia, I'm 23, and up until a few months ago I thought my life was pretty normal. I live with my mom and stepdad, who got married about 5 years ago. That's when I gained a stepsister, Emma. She's 24, just a year older than me. And honestly, we've always had a pretty rocky relationship. Emma's one of those girls who walks into a room and has everyone's attention immediately. She's stunning, like Instagram model level gorgeous, and she knows it. Growing up, she always made sure everyone else knew it too. I, on the other hand, was more of the awkward, bookish type, so yeah, she's always been the it girl, and I've just been there. Then there's my boyfriend, or ex-boyfriend, I guess, Liam. We'd been together for 2 years, and I thought he was my ride or die. Liam's the kind of guy who's charming to a fault, with this boy-next-door vibe that makes parents love him. My mom used to say, "Mia, you've got yourself a keeper," and I really thought I did. Our family dynamic was complicated. Emma and I were polite, but there was always this weird underlying competition, mostly coming from her. Liam was sweet to Emma, but I never thought anything of it. I mean, I trusted him, and Emma, as annoying as she could be, I never thought she'd pull something this shady. That's the setup. A picture-perfect couple, a not-so-perfect stepsister, and a family dynamic that already had some cracks in it. Little did I know, those cracks were about to become full-blown fault lines. Part 2. The night that changed everything. It all started on a Friday night. Liam and I had plans to have a chill movie night at my place. Nothing fancy, just popcorn, a couple of rom-coms, and us. But around 5 p.m., Liam texted me saying he was going to be late because of work stuff. Now, Liam works in marketing, and while his job can be demanding, Friday nights were usually a no-go for late meetings. Still, I brushed it off because, people get busy. While waiting, I decided to take a quick shower and change into something comfy. I was halfway through shaving my legs when I heard a faint knock on my bedroom door. Weird, right? But I figured it was my mom needing something, so I yelled, "Come in!" No answer. That's when I started feeling a little weird. I called out again, "Mom?" But there was still no response. I turned off the water, grabbed a towel, and peeked out of the bathroom. My bedroom door was slightly open, which it hadn't been before. Creepy, but again I convinced myself it was probably just my mom or Emma checking on me. About 30 minutes later, Liam finally texted me. He said he'd be over soon and wanted to make up for being late. A little suspicious, but I shrugged it off. I was excited to see him. Fast forward an hour. Liam finally shows up. But here's the weird part. He seemed off. He gave me this weird side hug instead of his usual kiss. And when I asked him how work was, he just mumbled something about being tired. I didn't press him on it because I didn't want to start the night on a bad note. We ended up watching a movie, but the vibe was just off. Liam was glued to his phone the entire time, barely paying attention. At one point, I jokingly said, "Should I be worried about who you're texting?" And he laughed it off, saying it was just his coworker. I didn't think much of it then, but in hindsight, that moment was a giant red flag waving right in my face. The night ended with a quick kiss goodbye and him leaving earlier than usual. He said he had a headache, and I, being the naive, trusting girlfriend, let it slide. Little did I know, that night was just the calm before the storm. Part 3. The red flags I ignored. Looking back, there were so many little things that should have tipped me off. I mean, hindsight is 20/20ths, right? But at the time, I just didn't want to believe that Liam or Emma could betray me like that. For starters, Emma and Liam had been getting a little too friendly lately. Like, nothing blatantly obvious, but subtle stuff. For example, Emma would always crack these flirty jokes around Liam like, "If Mia ever gets sick of you, call me." She'd laugh it off like it was nothing, but I'd feel this pang of discomfort every time. I brought it up to Liam once, and he just rolled his eyes, saying, "You know how Emma is. It's harmless." And then there was the texting. Over the past couple of months, Liam had been on his phone way more than usual. It wasn't just the frequency, it was the secrecy. He'd tilt his phone away from me when he texted, and sometimes, if I got close, he'd quickly lock the screen. When I jokingly asked, "What are you hiding?" he'd laugh and say, "Nothing, babe. Don't be paranoid." Oh, and Emma? She had started asking about Liam in ways that felt off. She'd say stuff like, "Do you think Liam's happy with you?" Or, "If you two ever broke up, I think I'd still keep him as a friend." Like, what? Who says that to their stepsister? I'd just brush her off with an eye roll, but now, I wish I'd paid more attention. The biggest red flag, though, was when Liam started canceling plans at the last minute. He used to be super reliable, but suddenly there was always some excuse. Work deadlines, family stuff, or just needing some alone time. It wasn't like him, but I kept convincing myself that he was just stressed. At one point, my best friend Sarah even called me out. She said, "Mia, something feels off about Liam. Are you sure everything's okay?" I defended him, of course, saying, Liam would never cheat on me. But deep down, I think I knew something wasn't right. The thing is, when you're in love, you want to believe the best in someone. You don't want to think that the person you trust the most could hurt you. So I ignored all the signs, convincing myself I was just overthinking. But then came the moment I couldn't ignore anymore. Part 4. The Discovery. It was a Sunday afternoon when everything hit the fan. Liam and I had made plans to hang out that day. We'd been texting all morning, making jokes, planning what we were going to do. At least, that's what I thought was happening. I was getting ready at my place, and I was in the middle of picking out what to wear when I noticed something strange. My phone buzzed. It was a message from Liam. "Hey babe, I might be running late today. Got caught up at Emma's. I'll head over in a bit." I didn't think too much of it at first. I mean, Emma had a tendency to ask for his help with random stuff, moving furniture, tech problems, whatever. They were just friends after all, right? But something about this felt different. I had a weird gut feeling. Maybe it was all those red flags I'd been ignoring, but for some reason, I decided to go with my instinct. I knew Emma was supposed to be home. Her car was in the driveway, and I could hear the faint sound of music coming from her room. So, without really thinking it through, I decided to drop by Emma's room and check on things. I knocked lightly at first. No answer. I knocked again, a little louder. Still no response. At this point, I was getting kind of annoyed. I opened the door, ready to give her a little lecture about privacy or whatever, but then I froze. There, right in front of me, was Liam and Emma, in my bed, together. It wasn't like they were just hanging out either. They were in bed together. Liam's shirt was off, and Emma was lying next to him, in a way that made it clear they weren't just casually chatting. The room was dark, the blinds half drawn, but I could see enough to understand what was happening. I stood there, completely paralyzed, for what felt like an eternity. I couldn't speak. I couldn't move. My mind was racing. Was this real? Was this some kind of sick joke? Liam's eyes went wide when he saw me. "Mia," he said, his voice shaky. But I couldn't hear him anymore. All I could hear was the pounding in my chest, like my heart was trying to escape my body. It felt like everything was falling apart in slow motion. Emma, on the other hand, didn't even look ashamed. She just smirked. "Well, well, well, Mia. Looks like you've caught us." I couldn't even process her words. I didn't know what to say, what to do. All I could think about was how badly I'd been played. I slammed the door shut and ran out of the house, my heart racing. It wasn't until I got outside, standing on the driveway, that I let myself break down. The tears came out of nowhere, and I didn't even try to stop them. Liam texted me immediately, "Mia, please let me explain." But I didn't want to hear his explanation. What explanation could there possibly be? Part 6. Emma's Apology. As I walked out of that coffee shop, I felt this weight lift off my chest. But it wasn't a feeling of relief. It was more like a mix of anger and disbelief. I couldn't wrap my head around the fact that Liam had just admitted to being emotionally involved with Emma, my own stepsister. And as if the situation couldn't get worse, I knew there was still something else I needed to deal with. I didn't even get to the parking lot before my phone started buzzing. At first, I assumed it was Liam trying to text me again, but no. This time, it was Emma. Her message was simple, but the audacity was off the charts. "Mia, can we talk? I'm sorry. I never meant for things to get this messy. Can you meet me at my place?" I wanted to ignore it. I really did. But part of me felt like I needed to hear her out. Maybe not for closure, but for the satisfaction of hearing her try to explain herself. And I won't lie, there was a part of me that wanted to see if she'd actually take any responsibility for what she'd done. Or if she'd play the victim, like I expected. So, against my better judgment, I went. When I arrived at Emma's house, I could already tell something was off. The blinds were drawn and the front door was cracked open just a little bit, like she was waiting for me. I took a deep breath, ready for whatever was coming my way. I walked in, and there she was, sitting on the couch like nothing had happened. She looked up when I entered, her expression cold but not exactly remorseful. "Thanks for coming. I know you're pissed, but I just want to talk." I didn't sit down. I stood there, arms crossed, my heart pounding. "Talk? You want to talk? About what exactly? About how you slept with my boyfriend? Or how you've been plotting this behind my back for who knows how long?" Emma's lips tightened, and she let out a long sigh. "Look, I know this looks bad, Mia, but you have to understand, it wasn't supposed to happen like this. I didn't plan for it to get this far." "This far?" I repeated the words in my head, trying to make sense of them. "So what? You and Liam just accidentally ended up in bed together? This wasn't some calculated thing? You were just caught in the moment, right?" She shifted uncomfortably. "I never wanted to hurt you. You know that, right? You're my sister. But Liam and I have been talking a lot lately, and I just felt this connection with him that I never expected." My blood was boiling now. "So that's your excuse? You felt a connection? You do realize I've been in a relationship with him for 2 years, right? And you just waltzed in like it was no big deal?" Emma's eyes finally softened, but there was still this weird, detached look on her face. It wasn't like she was sorry for what she'd done. She was sorry she got caught. I know it's messed up. I'm really sorry, Mia. I didn't want to hurt you, I swear. I thought maybe if I kept it quiet, it wouldn't affect you, but I was wrong. I never wanted things to go this far." I laughed bitterly. "You never wanted things to go this far? How much further were you planning to let it go? Were you waiting for me to find out eventually, or did you think I'd never notice?" She didn't answer that. Instead, she just stared at the floor, looking almost guilty. It wasn't the kind of guilt I was expecting, though. It wasn't real remorse. It felt more like self-pity. "I really did care about you, Mia. I just didn't know what I was doing," she said quietly. I took a step back, shaking my head. "You didn't know what you were doing? You literally slept with my boyfriend, and now you're sitting here acting like this is all just a misunderstanding. You had plenty of opportunities to stop, Emma. You could have told me. You could have backed off, but no, you chose this. You chose him." She looked up at me, her eyes pleading. "I know. I messed up. But I do care about you, Mia. I don't want you to hate me forever." I was silent for a moment. I didn't know how to respond. Part of me was still in shock, and the other part was just so angry that I couldn't process her words anymore. I wasn't sure if she was really sorry for what she'd done, or just sorry she'd gotten caught in the mess she'd created. I didn't say anything for a long time. Finally, I just looked at her and said, "I don't think I can forgive you for this, Emma. Not right now, anyway. You crossed the line, and I don't know if I'll ever be able to trust you again." Emma nodded, her expression softening, but she didn't argue. "I understand. I just wanted you to know I'm sorry." With that, I turned around and left. Part 5. The Confrontation. I spent the next few hours pacing around the block, trying to get my head straight. I didn't want to be anywhere near that house, especially not with Liam and Emma still inside, probably coming up with some lame excuse for what had just happened. The anger was building up inside me, and I knew that if I didn't confront them soon, I'd explode. I ended up at Sarah's place. She didn't even ask questions, just opened the door when she saw my face, no words needed. I collapsed on the couch, still crying. After a few minutes, I managed to choke out, "Liam and Emma, they were in bed together. In my bed, Sarah." Her face went pale. "No, no way. Are you sure? I nodded, barely able to speak. I saw it. I can't even describe how it felt seeing them like that. I thought I was going to pass out. Sarah sat down beside me, rubbing my back. Okay. We need to figure this out. You need to confront them, Mia. Don't let them get away with this. I wasn't sure I was ready for that. Part of me still couldn't believe what I'd seen. But the other part of me was so furious, so betrayed, that I knew I had to face them. I texted Liam, "We need to talk. Right now." He responded almost immediately. "Mia, please don't do anything rash. I didn't mean for this to happen." I laughed bitterly at his message. "What? You didn't mean to cheat on me with my stepsister?" It took a few minutes for him to respond. "I'm sorry, Mia. Please just let me explain." I felt this overwhelming urge to just shut off my phone and never speak to him again, but instead, I told him I'd meet him in an hour. I didn't want to do this over text. I needed to see him face to face. Sarah stayed with me the whole time, offering me some comfort and telling me over and over that I was doing the right thing. But even as I prepared to meet Liam, I felt a mix of fear, disbelief, and pure rage. How had I let myself get here? The confrontation was set to happen at the same coffee shop where Liam and I had gone on our first date. I thought it would be ironic, an almost poetic place to end things, if that's how it had to go. I arrived a few minutes early, sitting at a corner table, trying to calm my nerves. I didn't even want coffee at that point. I just needed to get through this. When Liam showed up, he looked like a man who had just been caught in the act. Because, well, he had been. His face was a mixture of guilt and nervousness, but honestly, I wasn't even sure if I cared about his feelings at this point. He sat down, looking at me like he expected me to say something first. "Liam," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "do you think I'm stupid?" He blinked, taken aback. "What? No, Mia, of course not. Then why the hell were you in bed with my stepsister?" I almost spat the word out. "In my bed? Are you seriously going to sit here and tell me that this isn't what it looks like?" He ran a hand through his hair. "Mia, it's not what you think." "No," I interrupted. "It's exactly what I think. You've been lying to me. You've been sneaking around behind my back, and I've been too blind to see it." Liam's eyes welled up a little, but I didn't feel bad. He had no right to look so broken. I was the one who had been betrayed. "I'm so sorry, Mia. I never meant for this to happen." I couldn't help myself. I laughed bitterly. "You didn't mean for it to happen? What does that even mean? Did you just wake up one morning and decide you were going to fall into bed with my stepsister? Was this some accident?" He shook his head, his voice cracking. "No, it wasn't an accident. I don't know how to explain it. I don't know when it started, but Emma, she's been there for me, Mia. She's always been there when I needed someone to talk to." My stomach twisted. "So, you fell in love with her, didn't you?" He was silent for a long moment, his eyes avoiding mine, and in that silence, I got my answer. I stood up. "I'm done, Liam. I don't want your excuses. I don't need to hear any more of your sorries." I threw a few bills on the table and turned to walk out, but Liam grabbed my wrist. "Mia, please don't walk away from me. I can't lose you." I yanked my arm away, fury rising in my chest. "You already lost me, Liam, the second you decided to betray me with her. Don't ever contact me again." And with that, I walked out. Part 7. The Fallout. After the confrontation with Emma, I thought I'd be able to get some closure, but it was far from over. If anything, it was just the beginning of the mess I was about to deal with. The next few days felt like a blur. I didn't really leave my apartment much. I just stayed home, staring at the walls, trying to process everything. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Liam and Emma in my mind, tangled up in a way I couldn't escape. The betrayal hit me like a ton of bricks. But what was worse was the sense of powerlessness I felt. How could I have missed all the signs? How could they have done this to me? Liam, of course, kept texting me and calling. His messages were a mix of apologies and pleas. "Please, Mia. I know I messed up. Please let me explain." I ignored them. I couldn't bear to read his words. How many times had I heard him say sorry before? But this was different. He wasn't just sorry he got caught. He was sorry he hurt me. That's what I kept telling myself, at least. But Emma, she didn't stop either. She sent me messages too, but her tone was different. She seemed to be genuinely regretful at first. But after a while I noticed something weird. Her messages started to sound less apologetic and more defensive. She tried to justify what had happened with things like, "I never meant to hurt you, Mia, but you're not a perfect person either, you know?" I honestly couldn't believe what I was reading. She was trying to shift the blame onto me? Really? That was when I realized that Emma wasn't just guilty of sleeping with my boyfriend. She was trying to manipulate the situation. She was trying to make me question whether I had somehow deserved this. It was sickening. But as much as I tried to shut everything out, it kept coming at me from every angle. Our mutual friends, people from work, even my mom, everyone seemed to know what had happened. They all kept telling me how sorry they were for me, but I was getting to a point where I didn't want their sympathy. I just wanted to disappear. Then, of course, came the real bombshell. One afternoon, I got a call from my mom. I wasn't in the mood to talk to anyone, especially not her, but I answered anyway. "Hey, sweetie, I've been talking to Emma," my mom said, her voice oddly calm. "She's really upset about what happened, and I think it might help if you two could talk it through. I don't want you two to be at odds forever." I froze. I could feel my blood pressure rising. My mom was siding with Emma? After everything that had gone down, she was still trying to play the family card? I tried to stay composed. "Mom, I can't believe you're saying this. You know what she did, right? She's the one who ruined everything. She slept with Liam, my boyfriend. And you're telling me to just forgive her?" There was a pause on the other end. "I know it's hard, Mia. I do. But Emma feels terrible about what happened. She's asking for forgiveness. You should consider talking to her." I didn't even know how to respond. The betrayal wasn't just from Liam and Emma anymore. It was starting to feel like my whole family was complicit in trying to brush this under the rug. I had always trusted my mom to have my back, but now it felt like she was taking Emma's side. I couldn't stay on the phone any longer. "I need space, Mom. I can't do this right now." I hung up before she could say anything else. The fallout was more than I'd bargained for. Liam was still texting me, still apologizing, still begging me to talk. But I just couldn't. I was done. And Emma, with her constant manipulation and passive-aggressive messages, made me realize that even if she was sorry, she wasn't sorry enough. She didn't understand the magnitude of what she'd done. She didn't care enough to truly own her actions. At that point, I felt like I was suffocating. I wanted to block everyone from my life. Liam, Emma, even my mom. But I knew I had to face it head on. I needed to take control of my life, even if it meant cutting people out. And I knew that the hardest part was still to come. Part 8. Cutting ties. The weeks after the fallout felt like one long, painful slog. I didn't feel like myself anymore. Every time I walked into a room, I could almost feel the weight of betrayal pressing down on me. There were moments where I'd get a text or a call from either Liam or Emma, and I'd almost give in. But then I'd remind myself of the hurt they caused. I couldn't just let them back into my life like nothing happened. But cutting ties, that was the hardest part. It wasn't just about ending things with Liam or putting distance between myself and Emma. It was about breaking free from everything that had tied me to this toxic situation. And that meant cutting ties with more than just the two of them. It started with the little things. I unfollowed Liam on social media. I deleted his contact info from my phone. It was a small step, but I needed the space to heal. Every picture, every message felt like a knife twisting deeper into the wound. I had to erase those reminders, no matter how much it hurt. But cutting ties with Emma was another level. We were supposed to be family. And while Liam was my boyfriend, Emma was my stepsister. For years, we'd shared a house, a life. And I never imagined that she would be capable of something like this. To betray me in such a personal way, there were no words for it. I wanted to scream at her, confront her again, but I knew it wouldn't change anything. She tried to reach out. I'd get random, cryptic messages from her. Things like, "I miss you, Mia," or "I hope you're doing okay. We really need to talk soon." But I ignored all of them. I didn't have the strength to have another fake conversation where she acted like nothing had happened. One night, after I'd blocked her on everything, I got a message from my mom. I should have known it was coming. "Mia, I don't know why you're shutting out your sister. She's still family, and she's really hurting. I think you should reconsider how you're handling this." I stared at the screen for a long time before replying. Every part of me wanted to yell at my mom for taking Emma's side, but I knew it wouldn't help. So, I typed out the most honest thing I could say. Mom, Emma isn't the victim here. She made her choice, and I have to make mine. I need distance. I can't keep pretending that everything's okay when it's not. Please respect that. I hit send, then immediately threw my phone across the bed. My mom didn't reply. I didn't expect her to. In the days that followed, the silence was deafening. I didn't talk to anyone from my old circle. Not friends, not family. I didn't want their sympathy anymore. I didn't want to hear anyone telling me that I should just get over it or give people second chances. No one seemed to understand how deeply this cut. The hardest part about cutting ties wasn't just severing the relationships with Liam and Emma. It was the realization that my family dynamic had been permanently changed. I'd never look at Emma the same way again, and I couldn't trust Liam ever again. They'd taken something that was so precious to me, and there was no going back. But as hard as it was, I knew I was doing the right thing. I was choosing myself over them, choosing my peace, my sanity, and my happiness. I still had a long way to go to heal. The grief from losing both Liam and Emma in different ways was overwhelming, but cutting those toxic people out of my life gave me a small sense of control. For the first time in a long time, I was putting myself first. Part 9. Finding Strength in Solitude. In the days following the decision to cut ties, there was a strange sort of emptiness that settled into my life. At first, it felt like I was floating in this awkward limbo, not really sure what to do with myself. The silence was almost suffocating. No texts from Liam, no calls from Emma, no random hangouts or inside jokes. It was just me. And at first, that was terrifying. I'd always been a part of a couple, always had someone to turn to, someone to share my life with. And now, I felt like I was standing alone, stripped of all the familiar faces I had surrounded myself with for so long. But as the days went on, something shifted. I started to see the solitude as an opportunity rather than a punishment. I began rediscovering who I was when I wasn't wrapped up in someone else's drama. I started doing things for me again, things I hadn't done in months, maybe even years. I signed up for yoga classes, something I used to love, but hadn't had the time for a while, juggling a relationship and trying to keep peace at home with Emma. I spent evenings reading books that had been collecting dust on my shelf, sipping on tea without the rush of having to be somewhere. I found small, quiet joys in the simple things, things I'd neglected because I was too busy caring for everyone else. One of the most important lessons I learned during this time was how to sit with my own feelings without running away from them. For so long, I'd been trying to distract myself from the reality of what had happened. I was always on the go, always involved in something, trying to outrun the pain. But now, there was no more running, and even though the pain was still there, lurking just beneath the surface, I realized that it wasn't something to fear. It was part of my healing process. I took long walks, letting the crisp air clear my head. There were times when the anger still bubbled up, when I thought about how Liam had betrayed me, how Emma had crossed a line I'd never imagined. I'd clench my fists and breathe deeply, trying to remind myself that I didn't need to hold on to that rage forever. I didn't need them to apologize or explain themselves to heal. I just needed to move forward at my own pace. I also spent more time with people who really mattered. The friends who had supported me from the beginning, like Sarah. She'd been there when I first found out, holding me up when I felt like I was going to fall apart. I needed people like her in my life, the ones who didn't bring drama, who didn't betray my trust, who were just genuinely there. It was a slow process. There were moments when I'd be reminded of Liam's laughter or Emma's constant teasing, and I'd feel that familiar stab of pain in my chest. But then I'd remind myself why I'd chosen this path. I wasn't alone in this anymore. I was surrounded by people who valued me, people who didn't make me question my worth. One night, Sarah and I sat on the couch, watching movies, eating pizza, and laughing about stupid things like we used to in high school. It was a stark contrast to how I'd been living for the past year, always walking on eggshells around Emma and Liam, trying to keep the peace. At that moment, I realized that my value wasn't tied to Liam or Emma. It wasn't tied to any relationship or any family bond. My worth was something that came from within me, and I was learning to recognize that again. A few weeks later, I received a message from my mom. It wasn't an apology or a lecture. It was simply, "I miss you, Mia. Let me know when you're ready to talk." I sat with it for a while, thinking about how to respond. For a long time, I thought I'd never be ready to talk to her again. But now, after finding some clarity, I knew I couldn't hold on to the anger forever. I took a deep breath, typed out a response. I'm doing better. I'm not sure when I'll be ready to talk, but I'll let you know when I am. It wasn't a perfect resolution, but it was a step toward healing, a step toward finding peace, even if it meant taking things one small, tentative step at a time. Healing wasn't linear, and there were still days when the betrayal felt fresh. But in solitude, I found strength. I found clarity. And most importantly, I found a sense of self that I'd forgotten I had. I didn't need Liam or Emma to feel whole. I was learning how to be whole on my own, and that was the most important thing. Part 10. Moving on, but never forgetting. The months that followed were a mix of slow, steady healing and moments of reflection. Life wasn't perfect, and there were days where I'd still catch myself thinking about Liam and Emma. I'd find myself wondering what they were doing, what they were thinking. But as time passed, those thoughts became less frequent, and I started to realize that my life, the life without them, was actually pretty great. It was hard at first to fully embrace the idea of moving on, but with every new day I got a little stronger. I was no longer bound by the weight of their betrayal, no longer constantly looking over my shoulder, wondering when the next drama would hit. I had control of my life now, and that freedom was something I hadn't truly appreciated before. I focused more on my personal goals. I found joy in the small, simple things I had neglected for too long. I threw myself into work, taking on new projects that made me feel accomplished and valued. I started traveling again, something I had put off for years while caught up in the chaos of my relationships. And I reconnected with friends I hadn't seen in ages, people who hadn't been involved in the drama of the past, and who reminded me what real, healthy relationships looked like. Eventually, I even began dating again. It was a slow process. I wasn't in a rush, but I had missed the feeling of companionship, just not with someone who would betray me. So, I took my time, getting to know people in a way that felt right this time. There were no games, no hidden agendas, just honesty and respect. But even as I started moving forward with my life, I couldn't fully forget what had happened. The betrayal left scars, and no matter how much time passed, they would always be a part of me. I'd never look at relationships the same way again. Never be able to completely trust someone without a tinge of doubt in the back of my mind. It wasn't just about Liam or Emma anymore. It was about learning to trust myself, my instincts, and knowing that I deserved better. A few months after the fallout, I heard through a mutual friend that Emma had moved away. Apparently, she had left town to try and start fresh, which, to be honest, felt like a relief. It wasn't that I wished her ill. It was just that the thought of seeing her again was something I wasn't ready for. I needed that space. And for once, it felt good to know that I was no longer tethered to the past. As for Liam, I heard he tried reaching out to me a few times through mutual friends, asking if I'd be willing to talk. But I wasn't interested in reopening that chapter. I had no desire to go back and revisit what had been a broken relationship from the start. The guy who had betrayed me wasn't someone I could just forget, and the idea of reconciling with him felt like an insult to everything I had done to move forward. In some twisted way, I was grateful for the whole experience. I wouldn't have chosen it, of course, but it taught me things I never would have learned otherwise. I learned that my worth wasn't determined by the people around me, that my happiness was my responsibility. I learned that it's okay to walk away from toxic relationships, no matter how difficult it is. And I learned that forgiveness doesn't always mean letting people back into your life. It means freeing yourself from the chains of their actions. And the most important lesson, I learned that I didn't need anyone to validate me. I was enough, just as I was. So, here I am, months later, stronger than I've ever been. Moving on doesn't mean forgetting, and it doesn't mean pretending that everything was okay. It means accepting what happened, learning from it, and using that knowledge to build a better future for yourself. I don't know what the future holds, but I'm excited about it. I'm in control now, and that's the most empowering feeling in the world. Thank you for reading my story. I hope it resonated with you, whether you've been through something similar or are just looking for some perspective. If you've learned anything from this, let it be that you're never truly alone, and no matter what, you always have the power to heal and move forward. Don't let anyone dim your light. Take care of yourselves and never settle for less than you deserve. If you've ever been through something similar, whether it's betrayal from a loved one or the challenge of moving on from a toxic situation, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and share your story. If you found this video helpful, make sure to like and subscribe for more stories about resilience, healing, and finding strength in even the hardest moments. You're not alone, and there's always hope for a better tomorrow.